Werewolves is directed by Stephen C. Miller and stars Frank Grillo, Lou Diamond Phillips, among others. And this story is set in a dystopian future where you have humans that are trying to stay indoors and not get exposed to sunlight due to a supermoon that causes their genes inside to turn into werewolves. And I'll leave it there because if you've seen from the trailers, it's pretty much like a cross of, it's like the Purge cross with werewolves, essentially. And you got Frank Grillo essentially playing the same character he played from the Purge Anarchy. And so he has to, once again, like much like in that film, he has to protect his family and have to kick, and in this, he has to kick ass and save his family and everything. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Stephen C. Miller, who I haven't seen much movies of. I know he's directed some direct-to-video action flicks that starring the likes of Bruce Willis and Sylvester Stallone, and some of them that I haven't heard weren't that good. But he did direct a film from 2012 I really enjoyed, which was the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, called Silent Night. And to this day, I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I remember really enjoying that one, and it definitely had a really unique take on the story. And going into this one, I've got really curious because I really love werewolf movies, because growing up, werewolves to me, much like vampires, they always sparked really great horror movies depending on which ones were made. Like my all-time favorite horror films as far as werewolf movies is definitely American Werewolf in London, and then going the original Wolfman from 1941. And then even some other ones I actually do enjoy, like the Underworld series and stuff. So there actually has been a lot of great werewolf movies that know how to make it work in that regard, especially with trying to mix in practical effects at the most. But there was that period for a long time where we were seeing that over-reliance of CGI and a lot of stuff. And that was one of the issues that I've had with a lot of over the years, because it's very hard to capture what American Werewolf in London and even some of the old classic werewolf movies used to do with using actual makeup and a lot of great practical effects like they used to. And so going into this one, I was actually really interested where it was gonna. I was really curious how this was gonna play out, because knowing that they were gonna do practical effects again, and with also the upcoming remake, the second remake coming out of the Wolfman, that one really has me curious too. So it seems like we're getting in a resurgence of werewolf movies again, and hopefully in a good way. And so upon seeing this one, I can say that this was a decent film. It's not by any means gonna change the genre or anything, but I will say that it definitely was something that really did something very unique in its premise, and was able to do something that was different from what we've seen from some of the other werewolf movies. But there's also some things that really hold it back, because there's a lot of things that it doesn't really quite take the premise to its potential of what it could do. But to get my pros out of the way, I do enjoy the cast in this. Really the best one, I think, the ones I think that stand out the most are definitely Frank Grillo and Lou Diamond Phillips. I feel like Frank Grillo is become one of those actors that I really enjoy seeing a lot of his movies, especially in some of his action films he did, and even the Purge movies and stuff. And the guy definitely has a lot of great range as a action guy, and being in these kind of movies like this, and even movies like The Purge and stuff, he's like the closest we would ever get if you couldn't get John Berthold to play the Punisher. This is my other choice I would go to as far as that regard, because he definitely has the skill and the versatile of playing that kind of character that's very, he's on the edge and everything. And even his other roles that he's done in movies like the Captain America films, the guy just shows that he knows how to play those kind of tough as nails soldier types that I really enjoy seeing. And here's no different, he really pulls it off. And there are some questionable stuff I do kind of also say with some of the writing with this character, but that's not, or some of the dialogue they give him at times, but that's not really his fault. That's just more of the bad writing they give. Because the movie does kind of have a play up with it trying to blend in that kind of fun level while also trying to be, dead on serious with it being a werewolf type of movie and stuff. And so I'll get into more of my cons on that later, but he was still a lot of fun to watch, and he was definitely the character I was really interested in where it went to the most, especially him protecting his family and everything. And the things I got to really appreciate the most is definitely the practical effects in this. It's great seeing werewolf movies like this being able to show us what we can see with the transformation scenes and stuff. And yes, there is some noticeable CGI in parts, and if it wasn't in some of the transformations, but for the most part, when you see the actual close-ups of the actual werewolves and everything, and even some of the parts where you see them like slowly turning. That was really great, and it really got me the feel of watching the classic ones like American Werewolf in London, and so that was great. And then also the cinematography and the lighting, the way they were able to capture in the nighttime scenes with the werewolves were really not only spot on, but I actually really do enjoy some of the way that the lighting plays out in this, because I know there's been a really big thing with this movie with the whole lens flares going on, but I actually didn't mind that so much because it gives it that kind of unique kind of look for it and really blends in the atmosphere and even the strobe lighting that it has in different scenes. It's like going, it certainly got me on the edge, and I kind of miss when we get used to get movies like that came out in the 90s and stuff, where you would see strobe lighting that happen. I know that can be for everyone because it can definitely get kind of annoying, but I actually really, I do enjoy that because it makes it feel more intenseful in that regard. And so there was that. And then some of the other things that they do, especially the gore effects, that were really good when you do see it. Especially there's some really brutal shit that the werewolves do when they're running amok and everything, so that was good. Now, if I'm going to have to get into some of my cons, we'll have to say that what this movie falls short with is that they do a whole lot of different things they set up in the film, but it goes by really fast because this movie is only an hour and a half, but it really seems like there's like chunks of this movie that's either missing or they gloss over completely where we're not really getting much resolvement on, because they set up characters in this that you're pretty much following throughout the film, but they either get tossed away or you pretty much don't even know what happens to them, and it's like, okay, how am I supposed to feel? I don't really I didn't really care what happens to this person or anything, because really the only one besides Frank Grillo, that there's all the rest of them, they come across as either not really having much going on with them, or there's just stuff that just, you get pretty much, or you really get ones that get killed instantly and you don't really care what happens. Not to mention, one of the other things that does hold the movie back too is there's some other characters that they actually throw in here that could be a nice idea that they set up with. I don't want to go into too much reveal, but it just seems like when we get introduced to other characters that are coming along with the film, either too late or in the story, they don't really do much with them to really advance anything, and they just seem like they're just there in one scene and just moving along. It just really seems like they're just drive-bys that you see and then going on the way to the next one. It's like sketches going throughout the film. It really seems like there's more to it that they could have explored more with, because there's actually a point that comes where you think it's going to lead to something big, but then it just happens like, no, that was just something that they were probably trying to be clever with, and it also reminded me of another movie and also something that they reminded me as well from The Purge as well in that regard. So I could definitely see this getting a lot of comparisons with The Purge in that regard with this one, because even the director himself, I saw in an interview that he had to basically not wanted to veer too far with trying to copy those movies. So I could see why there was some limitations they had to do with the writing in that regard. But with that being said, though, there's some dialogue in this movie that I feel like was very either cringe at times, because there's certain things that the characters would say that were trying to be like one-liners, and it comes across just like trying too hard. And not to mention, some of the acting in this can be very bad at times, especially the one that plays the mother of the little girl in the film. I thought that there are points where she does have some dialogue in this that feels very like forced, and the way that she's kind of trying to come across as kind of a badass in one part, and then it just really seems like you would see something, it's the kind of one-liners that you would see in something from like the 80s or 90s, but not in a good way, because it feels very forced the way that she delivers it. And I know it's probably not necessarily the actress's fault, but it's just the dialogue they give her, it just seems really like, ooh, that just does not sound right. And that's not the only one too, because Frank Grillo also has some lines in here that do kind of feel like, okay, they could really kind of punch the script up and give it to somebody like Shane Black or something, and maybe give us some better type of writing. It could have probably worked better in that regard. But yeah, some of the one-liners they do throw here and there toward the end get a little ridiculous. So there's that. And then on top of that, there also gets into a climax that I did really like where it was playing out, but it feels very rushed, and this movie ends very fast to where you're not really getting enough to really see how it really plays out in the end. Because I don't know if this movie was trying to veer itself into set up like a new franchise or anything, but it really seemed like there was stuff that was really, like, we were missing a whole lot of it when it got to the end. It was like they just gave up, or just ran out of time or something. So there's more I can go into detail, but this is one of those kind of movies that I had a decent time watching, and I actually did have some fun with a lot of the stuff they do with the werewolves and everything. It's just that it feels like there could have been more they really done a lot better with, and they really could have done there's a lot more stuff they really could have explored a lot with that regard. But I still appreciate them giving it a new, fresh take on the lore of the werewolves that we haven't seen before. and things that really expand on some stuff that also kind of makes interesting, like a rental you would probably watch on, like, not necessarily on Netflix, but like, you know, some of those on demand type of channels you see. And actually, and it's like a lower rent Daybreakers too in that regard, with it being like, with this being like kind of in a society of like werewolves and everything. It really makes me think of that too in that regard. And so overall, I still thought this was a decent fun. I still thought this was a decent fun time, but it could have been better. And with that, I'm going to give it a high average on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who have also seen Werewolves, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.